Hello, my YouTube friends. It's very nice to have you. My name is Marcus, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different exercise. I have it on the screen this very interesting chart from The Economist, and I want to replicate that in Tableau. The reason why I want to do that is because this chart is a great example of a good data visualization, and there are a couple of principles that they used very well here. The color scheme, the highlight for a specific data point. And I want to use those points and show you how you create that, replicate that inside Tableau, right? So if you're not yet subscribed to our channel, please remember to do that. Leave your thumbs up to give some help so we can grow our channel and continue to bring you great content. And let me show you how to do it. So let's go. Okay, so before I begin and do some hands-on exercise, the first thing I want to discuss with you is the reason why I chose this chart. So this chart shows the increase in Earth's temperature over the years, right? I don't want to get political here. I don't want to talk about global warming. I want to focus on the chart itself, right? Why is this a good chart in my opinion? It's very hard for you to use a line chart when you have so many lines to display. And that was the first thing that caught my attention in this chart. It's because they have, I don't know, dozens and dozens of lines, but it's still not too cluttered. It's not hard to interpret. It's not hard to read. So they did a pretty good job, in my opinion, in using color legends, in grouping those years together in a way that it's easy to understand and it's easier for the user to see what the focus should be. In this case, it's 2024 and 2023, right? We want to see the progression over the years. And they use the red color scheme to show that progression and how the temperature is rising up to the point where we see 2024 and 2023 at the top, right? So they did a pretty good job, and I want to show you how you do that in Tableau. Maybe you have a similar problem you're trying to solve for, and this might be a great exercise for you. So the data set for this, I use the same source they're using, this Copernicus Ear 5. It's a European institution that kind of records the temperature over the years. And the data set looks like this. It's just two columns. You have a date and a temperature. The date format is in a year month. And I just created a field here to convert that into an actual date field. So these are only three columns. I have date range from 1900 until 2024. In the chart, they have from 1940. So I have a bit of a stretch, a little bit more data points, which is great. So let me open Tableau. I'm going to connect to a text file because that's a CSV file. So that's considered a text file. It's called temperature. This is what it looks like. I'm going to hide this, the date field, because I just want to have this month field. And I'm actually going to rename this to date, because that might be confusing, right? Can't. Well, let's rename it to date 1. It's all good. Okay. So let me go into the sheet 1 where we're going to start building the chart. Okay. So if I select date 1, so we can take a look at it, and I double click the temperature anomaly. What it's showing by default, right? Tableau goes up to the highest level of granularity in the date field, for example. So that's year. So it's showing the year, and what's this temperature anomaly represents, just so you have some context. It's the difference in temperature for that year when compared to the century's average. So they took the average temperature from 1900 to 2000, right? 20th century. And for each individual year, how the average year for that, the average temperature for that year compares to the century averages, right? Century average, that's the one number. So that's the point of reference here. That's why you see the 3.79, for example, it's 3.79 degrees Celsius. So this is not Fahrenheit, just to give you some context. Okay, so let's build a line chart off of this. And we can see that we have it grouped together by year. So we want to change that. Instead of having year here on the columns, I want to select this first month, right? The raw month, not the month year option down here, but this raw month we have here, the first option. So I can select that, and it's showing like the sum of the temperatures for all years for January. So that's why it's 18 points, which doesn't make any sense. That's why we need to add year to the detail, so it breaks down into separate lines for each year. So I select date 1, I'll drag that into detail, and there you go, boom, that cluttered nasty view where we have each individual line, that's a year, and the temperature change compared to the century's average for each month, right? But that's was my initial thought when I looked at that chart. Like, this is just too much information, but they did a pretty good job. So we'll get to that point. But do you see how hard it is to interpret this data without any labels, without any color schemes? Never do this, because it's just a mess and it doesn't translate into any actionable information. The first thing we're going to do is group these years together. That's a great catch that they did. So they grouped into groups of 40, 20 years or whatever. And we're going to do that in here as well. So I'm going to create a calculated field here in Tableau. I'm going to call these year groups, right? I'm going to pause this video real quick. I'm going to create a calculation, and then I'll explain what I did using if statements. Okay, I'm back. So I used an if statement so to say if the year for, actually, date one, there we go. There we go. So if the year for the field date is less than 1941, then group that to 1900 till 1940. And I did that 4 more times. And I created a separate group for 2024. That was intentional because I wanted 2024 to be the highlight. So it's going to be a separate group, and I'm going to hit OK. And now we're going to drag that year group field we just created into color, and boom, there we go. Now it's kind of easier to interpret, easier to understand, because we have those year groups in here. I'm going to sort this out. So if I go into the legend and I click sort, I'm going to select descending. That's how I want to see. I want a 2024 to be at the top. So it's easy to see that progression. And it works for this chart because that's true. Like the early years had the lower temperature changes, and then that kind of progressed periodically until we got to 2023 and 2024. So that way, the sorting works perfectly, right? So it's easier for the user to interpret that progression in the vertical and using the color scheme we have. So let's change this color scheme using the same principle that they used. I'm going to change a different palette. I'm going to select red, right? So for 1900s, let's actually do this. I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to select this guy for very dark one. And for 1900s, let's select like a light gray, because that's what it had, right? The first group, the year group, they had a very light gray. It's great by me, if you ask me. So I'm going to hit OK. And then we can see that progression, right? You can see the light colors at the bottom. And it's easy to see that progression using that color scheme. The next thing we want to do, we want to add labels. Just like the chart we saw, we had labels just for 2023 and 2024. Okay, so how do we do that? We want to add year labels. So I'm going to drag the date one field into label. And it's going to create quarters for some weird reason. I'm actually going to select year, right? But it created labels for each individual year, right? And it's not overlapping any labels. That's why this cluttered section here is not showing any labels. So to show only individual data points, I'm going to select label, and I'm going to uncheck this box for show mark labels, right? But we still have the year for the date field in the label section here at the, on the left. So I'm going to select individual point and label that one. So I can see that this line represents 2023. So I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go to mark label and select always show. So this will kind of overlap the selection you made on the left. There we go. Now 2023 is showing just for that one data point you selected. And for 2024, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to check. Yeah, that's 2024. I'm going to right click, mark label, always show. Boom, right? And now I can go into label and I can kind of change the font. Let's make it bold, make it a 14 size. And I like this option here in Tableau called match mark color. So you can see that the colors, they match the color legend for that group here, which is great, right? So that's what we want to do. And the last thing I want to do, if you look closely into the example we have, 2024 has a thicker line to kind of set the highlight for that chart. In 2023, we also have a thicker line, but I'm just going to do that for 2024, okay? So I'm going to create a new calculated field here in Tableau. I'm going to call this line thickness, and I'm going to say if year group equals 2024, then I'm going to attribute a number 1, right? That's a thickness value, and we're going to adjust that. And else, since everything else will fall under the same category, I'm going to do 0.25 and then end. Okay, very simple. So the year 2024 will be 3 times thicker than the other years. That's what this calculated field is telling. So I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm going to drag this line thickness into the size, and boom, there you go. You can see that 2024 now is thicker than the other lines. You can go into the legend and adjust that manually if you want. So edit sizes. So I can kind of make all the lines a little bit less thick, and I can hit apply and see, you see? So I can hit okay. And that's kind of like what we had, right? So it's very, very similar. Of course, I need to adjust the size and all, but we're getting there. The other thing I want to do is just the axis headers. So I have the month name spelled out. I'm going to right click the axis. I'm going to select format, and then the dates format is set for the full month's name. I can select first letter, you see, and for the vertical axis, I can select added axis. I'm going to remove the title. I don't want any title. I'm going to explain that in the charts title and subtitle. And for the tick marks, you see that you have 1 decimal point for each tick mark, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. I don't want that. I can go into tick marks and set that fixed to 0.5. And now we have tick marks at every 0.5 degrees Celsius. I'm going to hit OK. And the last thing I'm going to do here is just set the chart size just for this view to fit width, so we can see that. And boom, there you go, right? We created like 90% of that chart. Of course, there's more formatting we can do to kind of be very, very close to this. But yeah, we're 95% there, which is great. So we can see that we follow the same principles. We highlighted 2024 with using the thickness, separate color, highlighting the labels, right? We are also highlighting 2023 because it's also important, but not that important as 2024. We use the color scheme, the color palette. In this case, we're using red to show kind of the year progression. And it's nice because we're using red because we're talking about temperature, right? So it's very easy to interpret that a darker red means warmer, right? So see how interesting and how good it is that they use the color scheme to represent that. So it's very, very nice use of all these different principles in a chart that otherwise would have been very, very bad, like very cluttered, a lot of lines, hard to interpret, right? So yeah, that's one way to do it. Using Tableau, you can do that in Power BI as well, but I decided to do that in Tableau today. I hope you liked this video, and please leave your comments below. What do you think? What are some other use cases for these principles or these chart that we built together? And leave your thumbs up if you like the video so we can always bring great content for you guys here on YouTube. Okay, see you next one.